Okay, before I get started, let me make something very clear. I am not a gamer. Okay, so I'm just going to put that out there. However, there was one series of games that I really enjoyed, in my adulthood. The whole game thing, I try to get into it, and it's, it just comes and goes for me, and it's a lot going for me now in my older years. But there was a series that I really liked, and that was Assassin's Creed. And I really liked it because the writers they had behind this, I mean, the storylines, they just really put in a lot of work in this series. And so this story that we're about to talk about, I can kind of relate to it because I've actually played the games in the past. So that's why I'm talking about it. But it does highlight something that is an ongoing trend that we've been seeing in channels like mine. We've been pointing this out over and over again, this trend to emasculate the black male. And they're doing it now with this latest game called Assassin's Creed Shadows, that's based in Japan, and it's focused on this famous black samurai by the name of Yasuke. And we're going to talk about him. We're just going to go through just really quickly because I think most of y'all are pretty familiar with it. It doesn't really have much of a whole story, but we'll just share the little that is out there, and we'll talk about that. Okay, so as I mentioned, this was a series that I really enjoyed playing. In fact, this game that you're seeing right now, this is Assassin's Creed Black Flag. That was the game that really where I was first introduced to the world of Assassin's Creed, and I really enjoyed playing it. Partly, I think, too, because I was playing it with my son, and we were just kind of going back and forth and playing it together. So it was just really something. It was just very immersive, and I just really enjoyed playing it. Full of action, just all kinds of stuff. You really like action and stuff, this was the game. And it was like being in a movie, like a lot of these other games that are out here today. The main character, you had a main character in this this game, but he had somebody that was kind of riding with him, and it was a black guy by the name of Adewale. And you can kind of see him on the screen right now, just very briefly there. And so they actually created a separate game for him called Freedom Cry. And here's Adewale in his game called Freedom Cry, where he's basically, he was going into these different Caribbean islands and freeing the slaves. And I thought it was the thought of putting together a game that centered around slavery, game and slavery, usually, that's not something that really mixes together, right? But they actually pulled it off. If you wanted to really immerse yourself in what it was like possibly living during that time. And of course, they added a little creativity to it, but for the most part, they stayed true to the history, which I really liked. And like I said, once again, as you can see, full of action and, all kinds of stuff there, which I really enjoyed playing. But this was kind of like a peel off game. It wasn't really a main game. It was kind of like a side mission kind of game. But even with that, I really enjoyed it. But then after that, they had another game. I think it was Assassin's Creed Revolutions. And that was centered around the French Revolution. And I tried to get into that, and I just kind of, after a while, I gotta do the adulting thing. I found other things to do, as opposed to, doing that. And it was fun, it was just a seasonal thing for me, and I just kind of kept it moving. But ever since then, the games they've been based in different parts of the world at different time periods and all that. That's kind of like the draw of these games. But lately, some of their games have been kind of falling off a little bit. They've been good, but it's kind of the writing starting to get a little weaker, as just based on what I'm hearing from other people out there who are gamers. It's not really the same excitement as it used to be with Assassin's Creed games. And this really shows up in his latest game that they just released, or they're releasing, called Assassin's Creed Shadows. And this one is based in ancient Japan, and it features an individual historical figure by the name of Yasuke, who actually was a black man or African man who came over to Japan by way of a Jesuit priest. And well, let's go to the Wikipedia, and it will just tell us the story. It's very brief. It says Yasuke was a samurai of African origin who served Oda Nobunaga, between 1581 and 1582 during the Sengoku period until Nobunaga's death. And they said, according to historical accounts, Yasuke first arrived in Japan in the service of an Italian Jesuit, Alessandro Valignano. Nobunaga summoned him out of a desire to see a black man. Subsequently, Nobunaga took him into his service and gave him the name Yasuke. As a samurai, he was granted a sword, a house, and stipend. Yasuke accompanied Nobunaga until his death and fought at I'm not going to try to pronounce that, fear of butchering it, until the death of Oda Nobutada. Afterwards, Yasuke was sent back to the Jesuits. There's no subsequent records of his life. And that's pretty much all they have on him. This is an image right here that they're saying that this could possibly be a depiction of him. And even if you look at the thumbnail for this video that you're watching right now, it's really not confirmed that that's him either. People are assuming that's him, but it's really not confirmed that's him. So the information that's on him is very sketchy at best, but it's enough to establish that this man did exist. Now, I'm all about taking creative license on some things, but here we have Ubisoft. They really took this thing to a whole different level. And what they're doing is they're repeating the same narratives that you see happening all the time when it comes to Hollywood and their whole narrative thing, where they always got to get black men emasculated. And let me pull up a clip on what they're doing with Yasuke. Now, keep in mind, we just showed you there's really not a whole lot of information on Yasuke, and beyond him being a samurai, there's really not a whole lot of information. But look at how Ubisoft, how they took the story.
I do not think I have ever seen you quite so tongue-tied.
Not yet, at least. I hope you aren't easily chilled. Do you think someone might see us?
Maybe.
Do you care?
Not at all.
Ugh. Now, they had to go there. Now, here you got this guy. If you look at some of the footage of the game, I mean, he's tearing up Japan. I mean, he's going out there, he's slicing and dicing and doing all this stuff. But they had to put that in there. Again, I'm okay with creative license, but this right here, it's not just creative license, as I've been saying. It matches an ongoing trend with Hollywood, is that if they want to push the LGBT narrative, they always got to include a black man. It's always a black man with a white man. It's always a black woman with a white woman. They always do that. They literally always do this all the time. Now check this out. This is from Game Radar. This is Simon LeMay Comtoy. I hope I'm saying his name right there. But he's an associate game director over at Ubisoft. And this is what he had to say on this. Now, he said, Japan has been, I would say, very, very tricky. And we want to be respectful about everything Japan. We want to avoid telling a culture about their own culture. Well, I mean, that's the story of what America does all the time. But anyway, he continues. That's one of the reasons as well why we had Yasuke as an outsider in the game. His preference, his perspective allows us to be a little more, I would say, free in terms of what Yasuke can do or say. As he's not from Japan and he doesn't know exactly everything. See how then he got to dumb him down. We were careful and attentive to feedback, and still, it's been a pretty constructive journey learning about Japan on the way. Now, the Japanese government has taken this whole game pretty well either, because the very thing that this game developer was saying that we were very careful not to do this, that, or whatever. Well, the Japanese government said, well, you didn't do enough. One of the things that was going on in this game beyond what we're pointing out is that there was a section in this game where they had the players smashing sacred shrines and stuff like that in Japan, in ancient Japan. And, the government said, no, we respect our ancestors, and how dare you put that kind of stuff in there? And so so they took a stand against that. And so, Ubisoft basically has confirmed that, hey, listen, we're going to make some adjustments, and we're not going to tolerate, we're going to fall in line to what the government is telling us to do with this game. But I also followed some of the talk, it was like off and on. I was following some of the talk that was going on about the game in general and how, Japanese game players were taken to this game. And, a lot of people did not like the fact that this game was centered around. Here you have a game that's centered around Japan and their culture. Again, when you look at all the other games that Assassin's Creed has done, it always the main protagonist always it represents that culture for the most part. But here you have, in this case, you have somebody completely off the grid coming in and being the face of this game, which represents an entire nation and their history. And so a lot of people took offense at that, which I can kind of understand. There was some racial elements in that too as well. And I get that part, because some of that is just whatever. But I do get that, man, you telling me Ubisoft, y'all can't do a game, let's say, that's centered in Central and Southern Africa, because they did one that was centered in Egypt. But I'm talking about, because a lot of these people, they always think Africa is just Egypt and that's it. But there are many, many parts of Africa, and Africa has many ancient civilizations that game makers like Ubisoft could really play around and explore with, but they probably will never do it. Same thing with some of the other games, the civilization games and all of that. They always tend to ignore one whole part of Africa, but that's besides the point. But the main point I just wanted to bring out with this is just, here you're taking someone who, when you look at this figure, just the little that we know, to become a samurai, it was no small task at all. It was a major, major training and stuff that they had to go through. It's kind of like, Japanese masculinity, that's what it really showed and represented. It was honor and all that stuff bundled into it. And here you have this company using a black face to come into that place and to add this whole homosexual line to it, and try to, stir things up and all of that. Now, I did read somewhere where they said that it's not a permanent part. It's not burned into the canon of the game, meaning that it's not, when you do play this game, you do have options of who you can play in the game, like a lot of their other games. But in this game, so you have a main storyline that you follow. And what I'm reading is, if you play this game, you can choose not to have that homosexual angle to it. You can choose something else. That's what I'm hearing, but the fact that you still had to put that in there, I think it's just a total and utter disgrace. And again, it just shows once again how black faces are being used as a Trojan horse to push this LGBT agenda. We are always the tip of the spear, that's usually ends up, we get all the hits, we get all the accusations. It always falls on us. And then we just get disposed, and then they just move on about their business on that. And so I'm just so tired of seeing that. And it reminded me of this other story that I came across. Then I would like to hear your thoughts on not just what I just talked about, but this other story too. Okay, so this next story here, this is featuring actor Anthony Mackie, which I really like him. I've seen him in numbers of stuff, and I think he's a pretty good actor. Well, recently he was in he's been doing like a series of podcasts. I don't know if there's on different people's podcasts, or maybe this is one and they chopped it up or whatever. But there was this one excerpt that I heard that I really I liked what I was hearing. And let's just play it, and then we'll just go from there. Okay.
I keep my boys humble. Like, my boys have never had a pair of Jordans. My boys don't do all that internet fly shit. I'm like your kids. And no, I don't give a I could be the biggest star in the world. Do not let me catch you being stupid. Mm-hmm. Do not. And my oldest gets it. My 15-year-old, he tells the other ones, he's like, yo, don't make dad mad. Because once you get one that's right, he gonna straighten the other ones out. Mm-hmm. So it's just that thing of, in the past 20 years, we've been living through the death of the American male. They have literally killed masculinity in our homes and our communities, for one reason or another. But I raised my boys to be young men. And however you feel about that, you feel about that. Right. But my boys will always be respectful. They will always say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. No, sir, no, ma'am. They will always say thank you. They will always open a door for a lady. They will always make sure that their mother is taken care and provided for. They will always be men. And that's always since they were 2 years old. Every time I left for a job, I tell my 15-year-old, you're the man of the house. Mm. You make sure these doors are locked every night. This alarm is on. You text me or you call me every night before you go to bed and you wake up.
I love that.
Because we're men. If I'm not there to protect, he got to be there to protect. Because you can have all the money in the world, climb through the window, that money means nothing. Right. You can have all the celebrity in the world, jump through the door, that celebrity means nothing. Yeah. So you got to have a little guard in there, And so for me, it's always that idea of American masculinity is very different.
Yeah, I heard what he said, and I was like, man, right on. That everything you saying, bruh, I'm with you 100%. I like what I'm hearing, and that's it. And the clip went viral for the most part. I mean, a lot of people were sharing it and passing it along and all of that. And, I thought what he was saying was good. But, memory is a gift. It really is a gift. And there's certain things I just don't forget. I don't forget because on one hand, I'm hearing what he's saying. But on the other hand, I'm seeing what you've been doing, bruh. I mean, I hear what you're saying about masculinity and, all of that. And, how America is killing masculinity and all of that. But, bruh, I'm looking at your body of work and you're in a movie called Other to Brother, where you're basically doing this kind of stuff. Right. But it wasn't just this movie. Now, that was earlier on, in his acting years or whatever. But he was also in this one. I think this is in Black Mirror. It was an episode, I think, of Black Mirror. Someone correct me. But same thing. He was a gamer. In this case, he was a gamer and he's experiencing, this kind of feelings or whatever with this dude. And they decided to kind of share a kiss and all that. And they were meeting in the game world to get it on and all this stuff. But you're telling us about masculinity. And so it's a confusing message. In other words, I'm hearing what you're saying. A lot of people say, do what I say, not as I do. That is a statement that has been around for a long time. And it's probably one of the worst bit of advice that you can give anybody. I always believe that truth is truth, no matter where it's coming from. I do get that. But if you, as a deliverer of truth, if you can't even abide by your own words, then your children and everybody else around you that's listening to you, they're going to say, well, wait a minute. If it ain't working for you, then chances are it ain't going to work for me. So I might as well go and do what I want to do. So my point is in bringing him up and how these two are related is what's the bottom source here? It's Hollywood. Folks, we cannot depend on Hollywood to define what masculinity is, particularly black masculinity. As you know, Hollywood has a very long history of taking black masculinity and making it a punchline to everything. And as we just witnessed through these recent elections, black masculinity was once again under attack. If you didn't vote a certain way, then you're cursed for life and you're this and that or whatever. And I'm not here crying victim. I'm just pointing out what we are dealing with as men, particularly as black straight men. And yes, it's okay to be a straight man in 2025. If you want to swing that way or that way, hey, that's you. But don't force it on our children. Don't force it on just everybody else that don't agree with that. Keep that in your space while the rest of us can live and do, and live our straight lives and just have a wonderful life. So, it's just really something to me to see this trend is still going on. And I think they're going to run the rails off of this thing. But it's important for us to keep watch on this stuff and to flag it every time we see it, because if you don't flag it, what happens is it becomes natural. It becomes second nature. It's just like, oh, well, hey, whatever. But no, that ain't it. Ubisoft, you need to take that game off the shelf. Take that off. Just like you had to make adjustments with the Japanese government, you need to start as one straight black man. I'm saying you need to make some adjustments on that game as it pertains to how you portraying this black man in history that had nothing to do with that agenda at all. Take it out of the game or just destroy the whole game in of itself. But based on the reviews that I'm seeing, the unpaid reviews, it doesn't look like that game is doing too well anyway. So we'll see what happens or whatever. But anyway, I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Thanks so much for tuning in. You guys take care, and I'll see you next time.